Welcome to our Capital Outlay Committee meeting, first after the last town meeting. And we have some new members. What I'll do is, can you guys hear me okay, Mark and Martha?
I can hear you fine, Rich.
Why don't you guys introduce yourselves first and what committee you come from?
Martha, go first.
I'm Martha Dunn, and I support the Outlay.
Okay. I'm Mark Kelleher. I represent the Finance Committee.
Martha, can you just say it slowly?
Yeah, it's Martha
Your audio shot.
Dunn, and I am. Is it?
Yep. Do you have your phone on or something?
No.
Okay, we're good. Martha, you're in.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
And I'm the select board
Okay. To my right,
member.
Yeah, I'm Scott Norum. I'm a representative from the Finance Committee.
I'm Ann Clark Tucker, and I'm a representative from the Planning Board.
I'm Rich Larius, and I represent the town manager, town administrator, Joe Powers. And the gentleman who's missing currently, who will be showing up a little later, is Paul Doan, and he also is representative of the town administrator. So we're all here. This is our first meeting. That's a welcome. Does anybody have any summer stories that they want to tell before we start? Good, let's get going. What we need to do is reorganize. And I have been on this committee for 15 years or so, 16 years. And I was brought on to be vice chairman, and within 3 years or 2 years, I became chairman. So I'm sort of chairmaned out, but I still want to be on the committee. So if you members want to, bring somebody up that we can vote on, my recommendation, I'll go first, for chairman would be Martha Donovan. Martha's been with us a while and is heavy into numbers and is very active in participating in town meeting and also the Monday night board meetings. And we have Mr. Doan.
Excuse me,
Hold
I'm
on.
not late.
What? Oh, you're not late. Come on over here.
Oh, jeez.
The camera has to get you.
Ohio.
You've got some paperwork there as well.
Okay, thanks.
As I was saying, Martha's been active in the Board of Selectmen meetings and town meeting, and I think she would make a fine chair. Are there any other recommendations?
Do you need a vote?
Yes, we need a
Need a
vote.
motion for a vote?
Yes, we need a motion.
Can I make a motion to vote on the chair for the Capital Outlay Committee?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you an aye or did you say?
No, sorry.
What?
You want to state the name and the position. You want to make sure you have a motion, a maker, and a second.
Okay, so I'll do it again.
Please.
Okay, so I make a motion that we vote Martha Donovan as chair of the Capital Outlay Committee. You need a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Martha,
Whether you like it or not.
Thank you.
the next meeting,
Go, Martha.
you're the chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll ship you all my uniform and stuff, the chairman uniform. Okay, and then we have the position of vice chair. And we've had a lot of in and out of members. One constant and one participant that I would like to nominate is Ann Tucker. Do I hear? That's mine.
Discussion
Second the motion.
or make a motion?
I make a motion that we vote Ann Tucker as vice chair.
Second the
Paul,
motion.
Second motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous, Ann Tucker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
What did I do wrong?
So you have members remote. Under the open meeting law, you have to do roll call to make sure you're capturing everyone's votes.
I did that before, when I want, who they introduced themselves.
So on every motion, anytime you call a vote, you want to say the member's name, and they'll state their vote.
Okay, let's try that again. All those in favor of Ann being vice chair? Let's start with Martha. Just say yes.
Aye.
I think we got
Yeah.
it.
Aye, okay. Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Rich Larius, aye.
I guess I can vote myself aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Okay, now, for what we have here, clerk, which is more of the hitter hit, that has to hit when we're needed to be hit. And I'm in favor, or my recommendation is Mark Callahan. I think Mark is going to be, or my thoughts are, Mark has a very strong concentration on what the Finance Committee does and has represented the Finance Committee with us. And I think Mark will be a fine clerk and let us know what's happening there and in favor of extending our knowledge to them. Mark, would you accept that?
I will accept it.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Well, do we have to make a motion?
I make a motion that Mark Kelleher be the clerk
Second.
of the Capital Outlay Committee. Second,
Do we have roll call?
we have a roll call. Mark?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
And aye.
Rich Larius, aye. Paul
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
So it's unanimous.
We're done.
Frank, aye.
Frank? Okay. I'm sorry, yeah,
Little late.
that's okay. You're here.
Thanks.
So we have 7 people now. This is the first time, let me just give a little history first. Thank you, Frank, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Who do you what committee do you represent?
Capital Outlay.
Okay, so
I believe are you a select board appointee?
Yes.
that's what I meant.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, this is Capital Outlay.
Yeah.
But we're all from different committees.
Yes, I'm a select board appointee.
Okay, so we have 7 people. It's the first time in a long time, and we're here today to kick off the year. And I hope we can still maintain the people that we have. Let me put it that way. Given that, are there any questions before we start the meeting? Before we start going into the subjects to be covered by the meeting? We will be covering on the letter D, the discussion of meeting schedule, votes to be taken. That meeting schedule is plural, meetings scheduled, so that we can plan out the year, good days, good months, bad months, and what we expect from our committee members. So why don't we give it over to you, Joe, for the presentation by the interim finance director.
And town administrator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Emeritus.
It's good to be old.
And congratulations to your colleagues who are in the leadership going forward.
Wonderful. It's like Mel Brooks. Go ahead.
So, and welcome to Mr. Wyachek, the new member.
Scott?
Scott was here last time, I thought, right? Did you make a
No.
meeting of it? I apologize.
No.
Scott's so well-known to me that I just thought he was around for old hat, so thank you both. And Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct. It is fantastic for you all to have a full complement of 7 members. And then, Mr. Chairman, if you could, that's the other document.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So, for the record, I'm Joe Powers, Town Administrator. I think many of you know, but I will just put it out there. The Capital Outlay Committee partners with me, Town Administrator. I am required under the charter, both Chapters 4 and 9, to not only develop all of the budgets, but also the capital outlay plan. And that's where you folks come in and provide great aid and assistance on that. And to me, the number one thing you do is make this process public. Because you are a public body, everything you do is on camera, out in public, and the discussions are recorded, which I think is excellent at creating a permanent record going forward. So thank you one and all for your service and for being here today to kick off the planning for the fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2030 capital outlay plan. In a moment, we're going to get into some details of financial updates, which would include the draft plan you have in front of you. I'm joined this afternoon by our interim finance director and town accountant, Eric Kinshirf. Eric is here on my left. And to Eric's left is Assistant Town Administrator Megan Eldridge. Megan was kind enough to accept my invitation to be here. I wanted you folks to know that Megan is the person that does the greatest effort in making these projects that are funded become procurements that are completed. And so this is the administration and finance team. And I think on behalf of the team, we're thrilled to join you all as you begin this process. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, what you should have in your possession is what's lovingly referred to as the big boy. That's this 11 by 17 sheet. And this is the first iteration of the capital outlay plan for fiscal years 26 through 30. And so you can see that I have highlights because I can make comments about what those highlights get to as far as changes. You should also have the corresponding applications for fiscal year 2026. So when you get to item D and you talk about your meeting schedule, I thought you may want to first focus on changes to fiscal year 2026 year over year. Even though our moderator and our town council remind us that these changes are ministerial only, you are developing a new plan every year, and specifically for fiscal year 2026, you're building a new funding scheme for that plan as well. And so I can talk about all of that. But, Mr. Chairman, we're joined today by our interim finance director, town accountant, because I know that there's been an earnest desire by you, the committee members, certainly by me, and I think everybody in town, to always have a solid understanding of where we are financially. So Eric and I have been presenting to the select board since Labor Day on financial updates. We can certainly speak to some data as it relates to the first quarter of the fiscal year, even though those numbers are still preliminary and haven't been presented yet formally by me to the select board. I thought Eric could probably speak to the calendar that interacts with your work. As you know, one of the largest funding sources for our capital outlay plan traditionally has been free cash. I know that when Eric and I presented to the select board, we have several target dates for not only the free cash certification, but also the tax rate setting and all of that. With that, Eric, would you be able to provide information first on free cash? And then I think the committee would be interested in a general overview of our debt position and debt generally.
Okay, so, thanks for having me here. So as far as, the free cash goes and closing the books, originally wanted to try to have it done on October 18th. It's got, deferred to next Friday, and, the reason was, temporary treasurer is out for the past 2 weeks, and, assistant treasurer just came back. But, we're looking at the preliminary numbers, and I'd expect the free cash to be around the $5 million mark for this year when it ultimately gets certified. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. I know right now there's $6 million in the stabilization fund, and Joe, you can kind of chime in here, but there was also an affordable housing and wastewater stabilization fund created.
Mhm.
There's about $1.6 million in each of those funds as well. As far as the debt goes, there is, I was looking at the debt service schedule. I don't have like the exact numbers, but obviously, you know, I was looking at the schedules, and the debt over time, the debt service goes down over time. So if there's a decision that's made that one of these projects would need to get borrowed instead of using free cash, I'd work with the treasurer fit in the debt service on the schedule, so the year-to-year increase to the budget would be mitigated. Because naturally, like, there might be $1 million in payments due next year, the year after might be $750,000, the year after might be $500,000. So if it's $1 million this year, if we borrow something new, you kind of use that gap to fund, like, new debt. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I'm sure after you vet everything out, and we can look at that a little bit more closely. So in a nutshell, in my experience with the capital planning, the main sources of funds are free cash is the main source, and then a lot of towns, I'm still getting familiar with Howard, have little pockets of money, like in the golf or whatever, like little separate funds, and I'll come forward with those as soon as I learn a little bit more. But, so I'd say, like, that's kind of where we're at right now. And the other thing that I just want to get educated on too is, when they do the capital plan, do they consider the Chapter 90 money as a funding source for the road project?
We do, yep.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that makes me feel a little bit better, because I'm looking at all this, and I'm like, I see $8.5 million. I said, I know there's not enough free cash in there to cover all these requests. And I'm looking at certain things, like the ambulance purchase, that fire engine, 1.3 million. Like, some of this stuff might want to be financed over time. So if you think those capital expenditures are valid and you approve it. So that's it in a nutshell. There's two parts to the capital plan. One is you have to consider, you consider whether it's a valid thing, that the town really needs it. And then two is find a way to pay for it. So that's basically the way I feel like the finance director's role, and us as a finance team, is to come up with alternatives to help pay to fund the program. And that's kind of what we're here for. Yep.
What is the stabilization fund, the 6 million you mentioned?
Yeah, that's money that the town sets aside every year, and it's just like a reserve fund. So the bond rating agencies like it. It's just, it can be used for any municipal purpose and be appropriated. So the idea is, if you have a real tough year or some emergency comes up, town meeting has that funds available to cover.
And do we have, is that a new fund, or?
No,
We've been
no,
holding that
yeah.
at that level more or less for a while?
I didn't,
Just for
go ahead.
emergencies?
Supposed to say in Harwich, rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's
sorry.
what folks have referred to it as. The most recent example of using it was during COVID, in the very early stages of COVID. However, the balance is very healthy, because the very next year we replenished through town meeting action those funds. So the general purpose stabilization, and what was it at, Eric, for a balance right now?
$6 million.
So $6 million is a healthy reserve. And then the other two that Eric mentioned are special purpose stabilization funds. So those are earmarked specifically for things to do with wastewater projects and affordable housing projects.
And those were the 1.6 per fund?
Yes, exactly.
More or less.
Yeah, they're twins right now.
What are the how does the stabilization fund get funded? Where did the money come from?
So typically, and when Eric talks about free cash, typically we use a portion of free cash to fund stabilization. We use a portion of free cash to fund our other post-employment benefits or OPEB costs. In certain years, we may use it to pay towards the unfunded,
Liability.
thank you, the unfunded pension liability. I did that one.
Okay, okay.
That's the same as OPEB, right? The unfunded pension?
I believe we do it differently in the sense that what I'm referring to is there's OPEB, but we may also do funds specifically for our obligations to the Barnstable County Retirement Service.
Right.
Pension, unfunded pension liability.
Yeah.
Am I capturing that correctly?
Yes. Yes.
And then
You
capital
got it right
projects,
on
which was
point.
mentioned at the beginning.
Correct,
as-
yeah.
As a use.
Scott, if I could build off of your question and create a brand-new topic, thank you. I've been also looking at the concept going forward of potentially establishing a special purpose stabilization fund for capital. When we first started talking about these special purpose funds 4 years ago, there were 3 categories that we considered: wastewater projects, affordable housing projects, and capital projects. And I think it's just, it gets to a better way of setting funds aside for a specific purpose. It's an act that requires town meeting approval, so you can't just take the money. But it also demonstrates a commitment to capital beyond just relying upon free cash year in and year out. So that is a policy discussion for sure, but it is something that we all may want to discuss in the coming months.
Right.
I just interject something historically, for the new members. What we see in front of us is the result of request forms on your left, okay? The request forms are anything that's greater than $50,000, correct? And our job is not to identify the source. At least we have not before. The source comes from the town administrator.
Generally speaking, correct, and then.
Right, we're not doing the analysis to say
Right,
it's
we'll be
gonna come out
providing.
of that. So I don't want you to think that we're gonna be identifying, or, okay, what we vote for, does it make sense to spend the money
Right.
on A, B, or C?
But what I heard was there's like a dual criteria. One is it a useful or necessary project?
That's ours.
That's definitely number one. But number two is also the question of affordability, which is part of our charge, I understand?
No, that's part of
Okay.
his charge, to say, dealing together, they will resolve the amount of money and where it's gonna come from. Should we vote, it makes sense.
Yep.
So that's what I'm wondering, do we get an envelope, a maximum for capital expenditures to
No.
kind of,
We
Allow
don't,
us to
it's not
prioritize.
looking at 8 million and saying, oh, we're not gonna afford
Okay.
$8 million.
Okay.
When they do the analysis, working closely, they come up with the ballpark figure and how it's gonna be financed. It may be 8 million, of which they say, okay, 5 million's coming out of free cash, or 4 million's coming out of free cash. The rest is gonna be borrowed, okay? Debt.
Yeah.
And the real thing, and especially with the new chairman, her strong point is to analyze debt. But the debt in the municipal world is far different than the debt in the corporate world or the education world. The debt on the municipal side, we have experts that handle that. Martha is the expert on realizing and analyzing debt. Okay? So that's not our job. We're not for it.
I was just picking up on what Eric had mentioned, Eric, right?
Yes.
About the capacity for new projects that is opening up in the future, given the fact that existing debt service will naturally decline as we go forward.
That's an assumption.
Okay,
That is a big assumption, that there is nothing that's going to be actually spent and decided debt over time. So we have gone through this a number of times where we look at a debt schedule and it goes like this, and then we find out, well, in this second year of decline, we have a big expense, wastewater.
right.
Wastewater, which
Yeah.
folds on top of it, and then you say, is it a real replacement?
Right.
And that's that the finance director and the town administrator has to tell us
Right.
or explain to us, this is the way it's done.
Absolutely.
Okay,
If I could,
go ahead.
if I could just weigh in, I think one of the things I got in front of the select board talked about was if you were,
Is
get
that
Marvel
Martha
the next 5 years, let's just use round numbers.
It's not working.
We can hear Mark just fine.
Yeah, can
Can't hear you, Martha.
We can't hear you, Martha.
you hear me? Okay, all right, I make my mind.
Why don't you go over
If I not
Mark's
sure why.
You sound like
What's that? Sorry?
double speed.
Martha, it's Jamie. I think your audio is cutting in and out, so we can't hear anything that you're saying incomplete. So if you wanted to type it in the chat and maybe one of the members can read your question or your comment, or if you wanted to call in on your cell phone and turn the audio off on your computer.
Okay, let me do that.
What number?
What number is she gonna call?
It's right on the agenda.
Yeah, let me turn this on.
224.
Yeah, we can't, anything that you say, we can't make out.
Got
It
it.
sounds like you're underwater, in fact. Or if you have a headset, if you had a headset with a microphone, you could plug that into your device.
Where's the call go to? Here,
Who picks it up?
Yeah.
When she dials in, Jamie will have access to that.
Yeah, she'll pop up as a fourth person on the telephone.
38 years with the phone company, I can't figure this.
Speak of the devil.
Looks like we got,
You're caller number one.
It's a turn off her speaker.
Martha, you also have to turn the speakers of your computer off because you're creating what's known as an audio loop, and it'll just keep feeding back into the room. So you're going to participate completely on your cell phone, and you can just leave your camera on.
Is that better?
that's
Yeah.
it. We got it, Martha.
Can you hear me now or no?
We can hear you now. This is Verizon. Yep.
I was just going to make the point that now I was going to make the point that if our capital budget is 60 million, and I went to town to the select board meeting, and we only have $5 million a year to spend on the capital budget. We're going to have a deficit in capital, so I'm really excited to hear that we're considering a new source of revenue for capital. I think this plan needs, money. You're going to go through these things, and a lot of this stuff needs to get done, but we don't necessarily have the resources. And issuing debt, and I think when Eric goes through the debt, my feeling is that those numbers could be quite high. And if you look at asset servicing cost on the debt, which is the cost to pay the principal and the interest every year, we're starting to top out. And it's significantly changed since I started this 3 years ago, from 5 cents on every operating dollar to now it's up to 8 cents. And, we just need to pay attention to that. So I think, we don't want to say we can't do these projects, because you're going to hear that many of them are really necessary, but we really need to figure out how to balance the debt, paying for the capital, and maybe getting a new source of capital here. So I'm happy to hear we're at least talking about it.
It's understood here, Martha. In your next meeting,
Yeah.
your next meeting, it's up to you to make it work.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, as part of our financial update, into those comments, I also just, at the risk of being a broken record, I'm okay with that, remind everybody that the town went through a borrowing exercise this past spring, and so we remain at the AAA bond rating, which is the highest possible out there through Standard & Poor's, and it's not two things that really happened. The prior year's borrowings that were based on AAA bond rating, those were affirmed. And then we were expanded for the next borrowing that we did, which I think came in just under 7 million that we were looking to borrow this past year. So that's a critical thing to be aware of, because it says first that the bond market for municipalities, we're the best you can be. That also then helps when we did the $42 million Phase 3 sewer extension, so with, the construction that's going to be starting in the coming months, being able to get the state revolving fund, or the SRF as it's called, to give, for the town to have earned zero interest over the 42 million over the 30 years for the note is fantastic, especially when we were trying to be conservative and anticipated a 2% interest rate. So as we talk about borrowings going forward, we, finance and administration, are keenly aware of that stuff. We don't ever want to be the ones to lose a AAA bond rating. We always want to perpetuate it, and we want to continue to demonstrate to our partners in the Commonwealth that we're worthy of 0%. So what that means for the general public out there is those bond payments over 30 years are going to remain at fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26 levels. You don't get that in the private sector world, so to speak. And then last but not least, I would just remind everybody, there's two things that happen with the capital plan. The current year, so fiscal year 2026, is the only part of the plan that we are required under statute to fund. And I know we want to look at the history and how the trends are going, but they're exactly that, trends. In fact, I think if you look at fiscal year 2026, when you compare it to the number we had plugged in last year's plan, this capital plan has gone down, even though project costs have gone up. And that's because things are always changing on the plan. So last year, we might have been looking at closer to $9 million for fiscal year 26, when we're looking at $8.5 million. The $500,000 is not a great savings, but it's in the right direction. And so,
It says 7 was in last year's town warrant for fiscal '26 was 6.995 million.
so thank you for
That's
that,
up just
dang
a
it.
tiny bit.
Well, my point, though, is when I presented this to the department heads, and they examined their capital request for fiscal year 26 back in June, we were trending towards $9 million.
Okay.
But programs weren't removed because of cost. So we look at the full 5 years, you have to develop a plan for town meeting that shows 5 years, but we need to fund fiscal year 2026. And additionally, as has already been said, we rely upon free cash, we rely upon other funds, uses and sources, we rely upon grants when available, or aid packages like Chapter 90. So I would offer, and my finance director our finance director can correct me, I think as we get into this process, the message remains that the town of Harwich is fiscally solid and on very stable ground as it relates to current conditions. Having said that, we never relax, I never relax, and we need to keep our heads on the swivel, and that's why we're fortunate to have $6 million in stabilization for God forbid activities. And then last but not least, as part of our update, I can walk you through the plan you see in front of you generally if you'd like. Otherwise, you can certainly get to item D, where you'll start talking about meetings to go through it more in depth.
I just want to, for the newer members, I'd like you gentlemen to clarify, we have numbers in front of us, we're called a Capital Outlay Committee, and we also have a Finance Committee. And so distinctly tell us the difference over time, whereas we stand today, what is expected of us and what is expected of the Finance Committee. Can you do that?
I believe I can.
Please.
Sure. I'm always going to go back to our governing documents. That's our charter. That sets everything up. And the legislature endorsed that charter and said this is how you can operate as the town of Harwich. So again, under Chapter 4, it talks about town administrator. I'm responsible, despite having capable finance directors and all of that, our form of government requires the role of town administrator to create everything related to town meeting as far as finances. So within that, under Chapter 9 is the financial provisions of the town. It identifies the Capital Outlay Committee, you folks, the Capital Outlay Plan, this document, as well as the Finance Committee. And I believe the Finance Committee also comes under town meeting chapter for the moderator, because that's how Finance Committee is appointed. Our charter talks about the Capital Outlay Committee shall, at the request of the administrator, assist in building the capital plan. And so that's why I've said, I rely upon you folks, and it's great to have 7 of you finally, first time in 4 years of my tenure that we've been able to say that, to have a fully constituted board, because your job is going to be, I'll have my department heads come in who are the requestors, and you and I will question them about their plans and their projects. As you've said, Mr. Chairman, the finance director, the assistant town administrator, and I are constantly looking at how the funding can come together. And that's another part of your role, is I will tell you whether or not we have the funds and whether or not we think that should go in the plan. And then lastly, for the capital outlay, you and I, according to the charter, it says that the Capital Outlay Committee and the town administrator shall present the fiscal year 2026 to 2023 plan in a joint meeting with the Select Board and the Finance Committee. and that's scheduled tentatively for early December. It must be done, according to the charter, within the month of December. And then the Finance Committee, as the financial oversight arm of town meeting. So I represent the administrative branch of government in concert with the executive branch of government, the Select Board. The Finance Committee is the committee for town meeting, the legislative branch. So they are charged by both charter and statute to take a critical eye towards all matters of finance. So you will intersect with them in December when we present the plan, both the documents and the funding, and then following that, they will weigh in on every article, including the budgets that the Select Board put into the warrant. And so that's the difference. You folks are created to assist the administrative function, whereas Finance Committee is created to support the legislative function.
And, and during the process that we're meeting and discussing things, we have two representatives of the Finance Committee that add value to this team and can share information when they go back to the Finance Committee and come back with either thumbs up, thumbs down, and some views. Doesn't change what we come up with, but certainly we have some input from members. So that's why I wanted it. Mark, you with me on that one?
I'm hearing you, yes.
Hey, oh, good. So that's where we stand. Now, can I continue now? Oh, I'm sorry. Paul.
Well, I just have a question on the points that Joe just made.
Sure.
Last year, there was a kind of a fly in the ointment in the process, it seemed, that decisions were made, and then kind of at the 11th hour, adjustments were made, things were reduced or removed from the funding schedule that we had worked on. And it seemed like the Capital Outlay Committee was kind of left to do their own thing and not really be involved in any of the discussions that led to what items were originally in the 2025 or 2026 budget, fiscal year budget. Am I correct in that? And should the Capital Outlay Committee have been reconvened in light of developments that seem to occur post our December meeting with the Finance Committee and the May meeting of the town meeting?
First, I will say that your recollections are correct. I'm going to add a little spice to it and say that if there was a fly, it was a 40-pound fly in a little bit of ointment. But as I witnessed the whole process, what occurred was relative. So I'm going to be, I don't mean to do that to be persnickety or anything else. I want to be very specific as to what happened and why, and try not to put in my personal feelings and beliefs on the process. What occurred factually was when the funding articles were before the Select Board. So we know that, and back to the chairman's, comments about how things are structured. So we know that the executive board, the Select Board, other than citizen petition, are the only ones that create the warrant. And they are responsible for putting articles in the warrant and for sealing the warrant and signing the warrant. So as they were discussing the financial articles that related to the capital plan in calendar year 2024 for the annual town meeting in '24, the Select Board, through their deliberations, removed the funding for one of the projects that was under facilities maintenance. During that discussion, I did ask that the board had a desire to reconvene with either Capital and Finance Committee, and the board opted not to go that route. So I think a purist will say that what the Select Board did was relative to a funding article which is their sole purview. That's as close as I can come to the boundaries without implicating anybody and hopefully not taking anybody else off.
Well, in the future, Mr. Chairman, I think there's a general sense, at least from my limited knowledge, a general sense that the Capital Outlay Committee is a powerful entity within the organization. It just sounds like it should be important. And in that context, when things of importance are occurring financially relative to capital expenditures, people sort of say, well, you're on the capital outlay budget committee, right? What are you folks doing? What is happening here? And I'm saying, search me, we haven't really met, and all of this has taken place. I think that in the future, if there are situations of that nature, that it's important to kind of rework the effort and go back through the process. I think there are people in the town who think because we meet with the selectmen and the finance committee, that that meeting is the result of deep deliberations by the entities, and will continue, that we provide kind of the public input into the creation of the capital budget. That's true to an extent, but it seems to me as though it's used when it's convenient and it's ignored when it's awkward. And I think it needs.
So, Paul,
What's that?
Martha
Martha.
wants to make a...
go ahead, Paul, finish something.
So I just think I still kind of struggle with what me as an individual of the public is, what role we're being asked to play. I understand we're asked to review this, but there are things in here, for example, that I am concerned about, and I guess maybe a more specific question would be under facilities maintenance. There's items, at least two of them, the last two on the list, that are in the budget there, or listed as items, that we've talked about last year, and that money was appropriated for in some cases. And today, there's no money in the budget for those items, yet they're indicated as a budgetary item. How is that possible? And what happened to the money that this committee felt strongly enough to have it approved previously, or it got kind of pushed aside? I don't know, I struggle with the whole, basically identifying where our role starts and where it ends. Because if it ends with the meeting with the selectmen, and we basically at that point have said, we've reviewed all of this, we've talked to the parties at stake here, and we endorse this program. And then something happens before it gets to the voters. It seems to me as though the Capital Outlay Committee should be brought back into the process and at least serve as a spokesman, a representative of the different bodies we represent in those subsequent deliberations. And I won't say any more about this.
Martha,
Joe, can I
Go
add
ahead.
something?
go ahead.
So, Paul, I totally agree with you, and I just want you to know that I was advocating behind the scenes for us to be involved in a number of these items. I maybe didn't win the battle, but I was heard loud and clear by the select board, and I'm hoping that this year it will be different and that they heard sort of my concerns about it. And I really do think there was, in my opinion, and I'll just say my opinion, there was sort of a difference between what's a capital item and how we pay for it. And I think if it's a capital item, it needs to be on the plan. If we can't pay for it, it's just one thing. It either needs pushed or it needs to get canceled. But if it's capital, it needs to be on the plan, suggested to the select board, whether they take that suggestion or not, that before they review any changes to the capital plan, they should ask if the capital outlay committee has reviewed it first. And if we haven't, they should want to hear what our opinions are. I've also advocated that there needs to be better communication between our committee after that December meeting, because we may have different ideas about things. And I think the process, personally, could have gone better had we been brought back in. So my hope is, and Joe can speak to this, that we don't have that problem next year, that it does come back through the capital outlay committee. But
Thanks.
Could I just ask, maybe,
Well, I'll conclude my comments with a war story, and that is, when I was first serving, had the privilege of representing this wonderful community in the Massachusetts Senate many, many, many years ago. One of the first things my floor leader said to me, Senator, when you go out and get in, to speak at different meetings and so forth, and they introduce you, be sure to tell them that you're a member of the, let's say at that point I was Taxation Committee, the powerful Senate Taxation Committee, or you're the ranking Republican on the powerful Senate Taxation Committee. Those words stuck with me, powerful and ranking. Of course, I was the only Republican, so it wasn't hard to be the ranking Republican. And the powerful aspect of it conveyed a sense that people generally feel that the legislative body and taxation has got to be powerful. So I came to this committee with kind of that same mantra, that the capital budget outlay, whatever, committee of the town played that powerful role. And I think it should. I think the charter speaks to that, the importance of the entity. And I'd like to make sure that we don't kind of get pushed aside when it's not convenient.
Well, Paul, I think you have strong leadership now that can, as I said when I introduced Martha, she has the ability, she has the history of going in front of the selectmen and the finance committee. So I feel real comfortable with Martha. Scott, go ahead.
so I was going to ask a related question, just after trying to crosswalk between the warrant capital plan and this draft capital plan. And when I looked at the warrant results and the adoption of the capital plan that carried by a majority vote had this note or amendment that was brought up, I think, right at the last minute at the town meeting. And it adopted the plan with the following changes to the fiscal 25 column. One was the addition of 1.16 million for Brooks Academy. Another was the addition of 2.5 million for the golf irrigation project. And finally, 1.5 million for the Public Works Road Maintenance Improvements project. So those three projects were added at last May's town meeting. And now when I look at this draft plan, I see there's the golf at 2.5, so that is now in 26. So I guess it wasn't really added to 25, or maybe all those were in anticipation of a fall town meeting that never happened. And because it didn't happen, it can't be in 25, it has to go to 26. So golf cleanly went to the 26 column. The road maintenance went to the 26th column, but at 700,000. So I was thinking, is that just the town's portion, not including Article 90 or whatever the state funding is? Maybe this is half of it, and it's really 1.4 in total. And then finally, Brooks Academy did not appear in the 26th column. So I had questions just following up on that, the way the results from the town meeting were represented in that summary of votes that went out after the meeting for those three projects.
So we're mixing up fiscal year 25 and 26. Fiscal year 25 did not include those three projects, so they were not adopted in the plan.
What does it mean in the vote record that it says that the capital plan is adopted with the following changes to the 25 column? These three
I'd have to
changes.
see that document. That's not my document.
Well, it wasn't the warrant. It was a last minute.
No,
like-
if you're talking about a votes reconciliation, that wouldn't be mine, so I'd have to look
Okay.
at that.
Yeah, it's right on the town website in the Civic Plus.
I can tell you what I've done and what I've spoken to.
Yeah,
And when projects were removed from the plan fiscal year 25, there was ample discussion about a special town meeting, to the point where I had set aside a date in November of 2024.
Right.
Recently, that has come to pass, that there's not going to be a special.
yeah.
That doesn't mean there couldn't be a special in the future, but those would require a quantum vote that's separate. But I think, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think there's at least two of us that have childcare issues that will be coming to the fore at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
But that's not me trying to stifle this conversation. I think as you go through your process, this conversation will continue. For me, however, I want to remind everybody that when you read the charter, the person who is held responsible for the capital plan and the budget is the town administrator. So no one had a keener interest than I, as town administrator, when those discussions were taking place. But there are elected officials that outrank, and there are elected officials that have executive authority, and that's a fact. Now, it doesn't mean we can't change the conversation for fiscal year 26 and beyond.
Okay, let me, you can leave,
All right.
okay? What I'd like to do.
You can't.
Let me just ask you one question before you do.
Sure.
What you're saying, or what you have said, so we can move forward, is that the budget, the capital requests are on here, correct?
Yes,
All
you
these-
you should have in your packet.
Okay.
Every
real quick.
application corresponding to
And we're
every,
expected, we can have these people come in and explain.
what you have thus far is fiscal year 26, because there's a timeliness element to the funding question. You do not have yet the out years.
Okay, so when does the complete, in other words, I don't want to bring police in twice, for example. When are we going to have the out years plus this?
You can have them for your next meeting whenever you decide that to be.
Okay, so what's reason? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever.
That's what you're gonna cover under item D. You wanna,
But if we're depending on your input for the meeting, what is reasonable to have people come in to discuss 25 and the out
sure,
years?
we can start in earnest in early November.
Okay, so we're talking a week or so.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to set some ground rules so that we don't have to come back again and we ask, the police department at the Gulf or the harbor master to come in and just address 25. I want to go out the out years.
So in departments' minds, the time for fiscal 26 requests is already closed. They're done submitting for the first year of the plan?
So far as their reporting authority is concerned.
Okay,
Yes, we've been working on the budget since June,
yeah.
on all facets, operating, community preservation, and capital. That's not to say if something doesn't arise, that we couldn't add it to the
Yeah.
plan.
Okay. Let me, Madam Chairman?
Yes,
That's you. You can run this thing and, did you get the package?
I have the package, yes.
Okay. If you want to contact me or just do it on your own, you got who the participants are, who are the members. and maybe you can talk to Joe a week or so and find out, and we'll discuss now when we're available, like is Tuesday a bad day, is Thursday a good day, morning, afternoon, dinner, evening, and check our availability. We'll do that, set that all up. You're part of it now. We get that done. The topics that insert into there, you can work with Joe to find out what's reasonable and what departments make sense. We've gone through this a dozen times where we say, okay, like the library is not on here, but I'm sure the library would like to come and talk to us. Correct?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
departments.
before I step out, the only thing I'd ask is, to your clerk, there is one deliverable, however. Your clerk is going to be the person most responsible for understanding your meeting schedule as well as room availability. So Mark.
You good with that, Mark?
Whenever you can swing by administration, we'll show you how you can figure out room availabilities and all that as you as a committee decide your meeting schedule.
You good with that, Mark?
Yeah, I do that for the finance committee, so I understand
I
about
heard you did an excellent
reserving
job.
the
You're
room.
doing an excellent job for them. So this is just a little piggyback, it's not a big deal. You're a good man.
Yeah, no, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
I got a question, Sean.
So the finance director is not a direct report of the town administrator, so if you tell him to stay, he has to stay. Thank you, everybody. I look
You
forward
want
to
to go
working
talk
with
to
you.
him?
Yeah, I just wanted to catch you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jamie.
Let's continue with, historically, what we've done is that if there's a small request or the numbers are small, like we don't have the library here, we don't have the community center, and they may have things that want to be put on here, and over time, they're greater than $50,000, but in 1 year, they're not.
Right.
So like in '26, they don't really care. They might have a 10,000 expense, and in the next year, it's 40, it's cumulative. So what we normally have done is, we've been like, sort of like bring in police and fire. They sort of make sense together, because they need radios, automobiles, and the cars, so that you know, are expensed. They're not capital items. So it's like toilet paper. It just goes.
I thought I saw a car on the list here, 210,000?
Back on the capital plan.
Sorry?
They brought them back on the capital plan. I think the select board decided that they should be on the capital plan, if I remember correctly.
They've gone back and forth
Ambulance. Yeah,
because of their
Ambulance.
cost.
and police cars.
There's a police car cruiser on this list in every year there's one of them.
I think because of the
Yeah, but-
cost of them now, they've
Yeah.
gone back on the capital plan.
That makes
It's
sense.
great, it's greater than 50,000.
Yep.
That's my point. If there's a number of them that they're buying and it's one lump sum purchase, and it's greater than 50, it has to be on here.
Right. Understood.
Last year and the year before, it was expensed.
Which we've gone over a couple of times.
Yes.
Which
back
way
and
to do
forth,
it.
Back and forth.
Right.
Logistically, Martha, you're the chairman. What days are good for you?
Thursdays work for me.
Morning, afternoon?
Seem to be good. I can do either.
Okay. How does Thursday sound for you, for the rest?
We have our finance committee meeting on Thursday evenings, the third Thursday of each month, but that's,
So we can.
I don't go
No,
there, so I don't really care,
okay, well, just saying what my conflict would be town-wise.
Scott, it's the second Thursday of the month.
Second Thursday.
That's why you're getting confused.
That's why I wasn't
So
there,
we're
Mark.
on.
So let's start with Thursday, yes, no.
Fine,
Or
Uh,
not.
So that there's space in between. Why don't we say morning?
yeah.
So in case you have stuff to do in the afternoon.
Thursday mornings would be better than afternoon.
Does that work?
Martha?
Thursday mornings?
Perfect for me.
Okay.
Mark?
Thursdays, once or twice a month, I'm up in Newburyport watching my grandkids, so Thursdays and Fridays.
Bring them here.
What's that?
Bring them down here.
You wouldn't like that, believe me. But, for example, I'm open the 7th and 8th, I'm open the 14th and 15th.
Okay, well,
The
let's,
21st and 22nd, I probably will not be
okay,
available.
let's assume that we want to meet in another 2 weeks?
And
It'll be
this
like
is,
the 7th.
and this is the first year that we can do this remotely. We haven't the last couple of years, so
Right.
that's a
Remote
first.
makes it better, for sure.
Wait, so it's our first in this committee at this
The
time. so
question
thankfully.
is, does it count for voting?
Yes,
If
it
you-
does.
For voting?
It does,
Yes,
which is new.
yes.
Then I'm
Which
gonna
is
stay
new.
home.
Yeah, don't do
Thank
that
you.
to us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Mark,
so,
yeah,
let's pick the 7th.
Good.
That's our first
That's good for
meeting.
me.
Okay,
is that enough
Time.
time?
what's today?
They said the out years haven't been done.
It's 2 weeks. He said early November.
Yeah.
That's early November.
Well, Martha will work on to make sure the 7th works. If it
Okay.
doesn't, then we'll go to the 14th. It's
Okay.
up to Martha. And I would say we just have November and December to get this thing done. I would say every other week.
So that's 21, well, but are we the first week of December with the Board of Selectmen? That was we kind of went
It's
backwards.
the
some-
month of December,
That's the
We
statute.
said the month of December.
the month.
In the
Right.
month of December.
Right, we had aimed,
Don't worry, if
It's a
we're
whole
not
month.
complete, we have to
I
have the people.
understand it's a whole month.
Yeah, we,
I've done this before too, so just bear with me for a second. Because it takes longer and people like to
Understood.
come in. And the other thing is, we had found great help on scheduling a visit to the bigger projects.
well, that's,
Because, let me just finish,
Sure.
Rich. Because the ones that are coming up next year, right? Sometimes the bigger ones that flag here, like there'll be $700,000 for the harbor to do the design for what they're anticipating
For
to
9
spend.
million the next year.
For 9 million the next year. So as representatives of the public, if we've seen what this is and can start to convey it, it makes a huge difference. Otherwise, it shows up as this lump and people get
That's a great point.
concerned. So the last 2 years, we've done a brief tour of
Site visits, yeah.
site visits, and we have to do them in a way that we don't feel like we're a meeting and all of those other things, correct?
yes, and
Correct.
we were lax. We had the whole summer and spring to do it, and we did not.
We took it off, yeah.
Again, we
For
have a
those two
new,
marine projects, that would be great to do this coming
we have a
summer.
new chairman, and she is responsible for
Allen Harbor and
getting together the site visits in a timely fashion before or after we present the 26 numbers. I just think we have 6 to 8 weeks to get this done, and
Yeah.
it's, and the other thing is, the caveat is, the numbers that we present and the numbers that are on the paper are flexible. They are changeable to town meeting, and that's why you read the caveat. This is subject to change, this is subject. They're subject to change in town meeting. I've been in meetings, town meeting night. This committee and the finance committee and the board of selectmen have pre-meeting meetings that night. And in those meetings, there's a possibility to drop something or add something.
Can we still do that
Yes.
with the open meeting law, pre-meetings?
No, they gather to discuss town meeting and how the presentation's gonna be and so forth.
Okay.
Yes,
and that's public,
yes.
public meeting, has to be.
Has to be.
You good with that, Martha?
Yeah, I'm good with that, yeah.
So,
I mean, if we wanted to, in the next 2 weeks, we could go do a couple of off-sites. We can't talk about them. And then November 7th.
well, you have everybody's email and phone numbers, and so you can get that from Joe's office. The ball's in your court now. I'm just a
Lame duck.
lame duck. I'm Joe Biden. So, does that work for
Have we set
everybody?
a meeting for the 7th of November
Well,
in the morning?
Yeah, it'll
yes.
be in the morning only, yeah.
Thursday, the 7th would be a good meeting for the first meeting, and if you plan, you set the agenda. If you can get like the police or the harbor master, and we want to get some things discussed, fine. The hopeful part is that we have the ability to actually see out years, and that's where Joe is saying that he doesn't have the numbers yet, and I think it's a waste of time to bring somebody in, like Public Works, to discuss 700,000 and 830,000 when they have all these out years, which they can't discuss. It's up to you.
Well, I think Joe said we should be ready at the beginning of November, so I'll confirm that with him, and let's just tentatively say, you know, put something on for the 7th, and let's pick a time, and then maybe put something on for the 14th and pick a time, and then we can kind of go from there, if that makes sense.
Sure.
At least have the next two.
Members, is that?
So what time in the morning if people want to meet?
So what was the decision, 11-7?
Oh, you're not involved, don't worry about
Okay.
11/7 at 10 would
it.
work.
You still have to know.
Yeah, just-
11/7, 11/14, 10 a.m.?
I'd say 10 or 11.
You have to just check whether we have the room, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's other
There's a-
rooms, we don't have to meet in here. We've
One
met in the
other.
little, there's a little conference room
Small
next,
conference room, yeah.
really small down there.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
That's where we meet, Historic Commission meets in there.
yeah, but you've got 3 people. Yeah. You could lose them in.
Much
So
better.
is it 10 a.m. on the 7th and the 14th?
10 a.m. works with you?
That's what we're... Yep, I'm good with that.
Can I just ask one procedural question?
Sure, why not?
In terms of open meeting law, if I wanted to propose an agenda item for the meeting of the 7th or the 14th, am I allowed to send that to everyone, or must I send it only to the chair because
Send it-
everyone,
send it
copy
to-
everyone would
send
be
it to the
against
chair.
the rule?
She'll tell you
Right.
if it's
Okay.
good or not. She'll run it past Joe if it's controversial. You know,
Okay.
We won't do it.
There
No,
can't
I'm kidding.
be- There can't be 2 or more members
Mark, are you good?
constitutes a meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I-
good.
Just
I'm good if, just one suggestion, if somebody's willing to go into the the town administrator's office, you can look at the calendar right now and see if we have a small room, a big room open on the 7th and 14th.
I don't know if we've got anybody there.
Just a thought.
I'll check and email both of you.
Okay.
Then you're
Thanks,
probably
Rich.
doing nothing after that.
Does that work, or you want me to run down right now? Let me run down. Or in my case, walk down.
The 7th and 14th.
Do you
Yeah.
know the availability of these rooms?
I can't turn the cameras off until you adjourn.
Okay. let's
Do we
adjourn.
need, do you need a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion, we need a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. I'll call you or email you both, and we can figure it out. The 7th